I'm going to talk a bit first about one theme for tonight, which is white Tara. And white Tara in Tibetan Buddhism is a very important embodiment of the divine feminine. Uh, there is a story of the great sort of bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara in Buddhism. In Tibetan, they know him as Chenrezig. But Avalokiteshvara is this embodiment of boundless compassion, deep, profound, fierce compassion, loyal compassion. Um, and so we strive to kind of embody that in a way where this compassion is imbued with wisdom, with profound wisdom, rather than vulnerability, although there can be vulnerability in being present with suffering, of course, but not in kind of a way in which the spine is soft and the front has a shell on it, but in such a way that we are strengthened by uh, this posture of standing on our hearts in a way that keeps us stable and strong, because it's imbued with transparency and wisdom. So this notion of boundless compassion that Avalokiteshvara embodies is that it is deeply imbued with engagement, connection, unity in the suffering we experience. And although Avalokiteshvara is seen to be a profound, very sort of enlightened bodhisattva of compassion, he also feels the suffering that we experience. And so it's said that this being weeps. He weeps when we suffer. When we are weeping and we are suffering, Avalokiteshvara weeps. And out of his right eye, the tear that comes from his right eye is that of green Tara. Green Tara is another form of Tara. She is the protector and the one who enfolds us in some what we might call merciful compassion and protection. And out of his left eye comes white Tara. So out of the tears of his left eye, white Tara also arises as a response to our suffering. And what she brings is this, what we might call kind of this resonance, this energy of longevity, of well being, as well as merit, what is known in Buddhism as merit, and guidance, spiritual guidance. So if we're going through a period where we're confused or we're indecisive or we have a very difficult decision to make and we just don't know what to do, and it's so upsetting that we're torn in half by it, perhaps. White Tara is there to help steer us a bit with insight and wisdom into a place that we need to be. And so in that sense, she is also the one who helps us accumulate what's called merit. And we can look at merit later a bit if you want to, but we don't need to focus so much on that yet. But white Tara is really pretty key here in that aspect of who we are. In Vajrayana, the Tantric Buddhist tradition, all of these beings are seen to be manifestations of qualities we already embody. So rather than necessarily, if we chant to white Tara, Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Ayu Punya Jana Pushtim Kuru Swaha. That's the chant for white Tara. We may be appeasing, or not appeasing, but we may be appealing to sort of the energy all around us, everywhere, that embodies this wisdom, but we are also invoking that quality that is within us, that capacity for well-being and for guidance that we carry within us. And so this is understood that in the ultimate meaning of white Tara, that these are qualities we already have. We are simply allowing them to arise through a sustained chant, the meditation, and so on. And so, in many ways, white Tara is the one who helps us with discernment. And I wanted to talk a bit about discernment this evening after we do some chanting and we do some meditating. We'll talk a little bit also about what that looks like. I've been speaking to quite a few people who are going through life changes right now. and the road doesn't necessarily look very clear. And I feel as if part of what's happening is we're looking ahead now at the world, quote unquote, opening back up. We're looking ahead at maybe taking steps beyond sort of these little pods that we've been living in, and thinking about, okay, what is life going to look like in the coming year? I think it's going to be pretty sweet, actually, in many ways, because we're going to be gathering in person, and all those great love chemicals are going to start firing off in all directions. Oxytocin is going to be out of control. In fact, we should harness that so we can use it for clean energy. Just love more. You can even sell it back to the power company. So how cool would that be? That might be a cool book, right? Powered by love. You could call it that. Anyway, so I think what that's also doing, though, is I think it's invoking some anxiety for some people and some fear, and also some introspection about what is my life really all about here. What we can call an adaptive challenge. Anyone who has read the work by Ronald Heifetz at the Harvard Kennedy the School of Government, who's written a book on adaptive leadership, and a lot of what he talks about is that um, dealing with change isn't just it's not just a question of where do I find the answers, but it's also a question of what is the situation I'm in before I find the answers. And what I mean is that according to Heifetz, there is this kind of dual process at work. One side of this is something is coming up. There's a problem that you could call a technical problem, such as my light bulb burns out. Oh, and I know what to do about that. It's always worked before. I go to the store, I get a new light bulb, I put it in, and the light works. It's a technical solution for a technical problem. Adaptive challenges are not so easy because it's asking us, it's that the technical solutions don't work anymore. What used to work doesn't work now. And so the solution has to be an adaptive one. It has to be one that perhaps we haven't done before. We need to find something that is appropriate to the conditions that we are in now. And so that takes some discernment. That takes some almost looking in the opposite direction of what is intuitive to us, or what we might more accurately say is habitual. We have habits in how we approach life challenges. And so I teach this stuff at Harvard Divinity School around some of this leadership stuff. And when I'm in class and I have a board, either a whiteboard or, believe it or not, there still are chalkboards there. I'll make sort of a circle, and then, okay, here is you, right? Here is where you're headed in your life. And then here you hit an adaptive challenge and you can't keep going. And so does the arrow now go this way? Does it go this way? It may go this way. And then I make a big sweeping U-turn and the arrow's going back the other way, right? Meaning we may be needing to look in places we hadn't thought we might need to look for answers. And so how we find adaptive solutions to change that may be different or new in our lives um, can pose a big problem. But anyway, the point is that this is the situation we may be finding ourselves in. And so if it's hard, you're not alone in this. It's a hard situation to be in. And so how we cultivate discernment. This is the realm of White Tara. Um, my teacher Leslie used to tell us. She used to describe discernment as knowing the difference between truth and illusion. Knowing the difference between truth and illusion. What on earth does that mean? Um, and I'd like to have a conversation about that. Maybe later, and if we do this after 8 o'clock when we're officially done with our practice session, but what that looks like. So again, White Tara is there to help with that discernment. And we're not talking about intellectual discernment, but adaptive challenges means that we're not able to use the old rational system that has worked before because it only knows what it already knows. So we need to deepen it down into a more intuitive way of knowing. In many ways, discernment here is touching down into your heart's deepest intention to know what is true for you. Remember, wisdom and insight doesn't come from reason or rationality necessarily altogether, but awareness arises from the heart in Buddhism and in all the Eastern traditions. This is the source of consciousness. So we may need to look here. Yeah. There's an interesting way that discernment is talked about in Buddhism. Often, as I mentioned before, the difference between truth and illusion is how one of my teachers talked about it. Um, and in the Pali Canon, it's often talked about as knowing the difference between that which is conditioned or fabricated and that which is unconditioned or uncontrived, right? And that can be, sort of some of the difficulties we have in deciding things. It can happen because of all the conditioning and all of the contrivances that go into needing to mold things in habitual ways. So, how we actually can engage in adaptive solutions, I think, involves the deconstructing that we just did in this meditation. And actually, it's not deconstructing as much as it is relinquishing and just allowing ourselves to abide in some freedom from all of those things to see what else is there. Because when we're no longer creating the spin out of the spin itself, we're able to uncover perhaps more creativity, more insight into our heart's deepest calling. And that's where the good stuff is. That's where the insight is. That's where the discernment is. What is your heart calling you to do? Not what should I do? Yeah. So we live from that place. And when it's quiet and the fragrance of our own calling and our own aspirations is able to be free, I think we have a better sense in that quiet, in that silence of what needs to happen, even if we don't want to hear it. Doesn't mean you have to do it. It's just I know better, but I still have to do this. That's okay too. You always get another chance.